Hi everyone, it's Lily with Cherry Tree Beads. Today I'm going to be showing you a really awesome necklace design idea. We're going to be using a gemstone hex pendant. This one is amethyst, but we've got a few different gemstone options. Some brass chain, a stainless steel finished necklace in gold, some little brass rings or hoops, a 24 gauge wire and 16 gauge wire. So the first step is I'm going to take this finished necklace. These guys are great because they already come with a lobster clasp attached to them. Really convenient for projects. And what I'm going to do to start off is cut the bottom section. So you can decide how much of it you want to cut off depending on the length and how much of this coin brass chain that you want to add. I'm going to just eyeball it and cut the bottom part here. We are going to still use that chain, but if you want your necklace to be shorter, you can cut off some and not use it, or not use as much of that. Personal preference. So that is cut. And next I'm just going to add this chain to both sides. So you're getting about 8 inches of this chain in our kits. Or you can order it by the meter on our website too if you want to do it yourself. So I'm just going to make sure I get the same amount of coins. So it looks like there'll just be one extra one. So I'm going to cut him off and just divide this into 2 equal parts. And that's just going to go on either side here. And this chain does have open links. So I'm going to take my needle nose pliers and just open up that link enough that I can add this chain to it. You can also use a jump ring if you don't feel like opening up the chain, but I think that the finished look is a lot cleaner when you just add the chain directly on there. It can sometimes be tricky, but if you've got really fine needle nose, it's gonna be a tiny bit easier for you. And so he just has to be open the very slightest to be able to slide this piece in. I guess a slight bit more than that, huh? There we are. And we're just gonna attach him in. And then you can use those needle nose pliers again or a flat nose plier, and you're just gonna close that link up so that the brass chain doesn't fall off of there. We're gonna do the same thing to this other side. So just open up that last little link. Attach this chain here. And then we're gonna close the link back up. There we are. And if you remember that little piece that we cut off, I'm gonna attach that at the bottom. And this is where you can decide how much you want it to be. If you want the coins to be up higher, you're just gonna cut more of that chain off of the bottom for you. Or if you want that piece to be smaller, just a little bit, you just cut less off of the bottom. But same process, you just wanna open up that link. On the open end here. And then just stick that coin in there and close him up. And then our last little bit over here. And we're gonna close him up. And now we have a finished chain It's gonna be time to work on our pendant. So this guy is drilled at the top, and we're gonna use our 24 gauge wire through that. But with this 16 gauge wire, we're gonna make a component for him. This is gonna be the trickiest part, I think, of the entire design idea. And it's only tricky because you wanna make sure that your wire is staying straight, and it's kind of hard to get the loop perfect. But you can use a dowel. I don't have any here, so I typically at home will use a marker or sometimes a nail polish bottle, depending on the diameter that I want it to be. But if you've got dowels, you can use those as well. So I'm just gonna take this 16 gauge and put it on the one end and use that marker to help me get a loop. And then just have those go straight out. And that marker is gonna be a little bit big. We want this to be flush with the pennant, so it's just gonna go straight down. So I'm just gonna take that top end and squish it a little bit tighter. You're just making a horseshoe shape with this guy. Just about good. I'm gonna smush it down the tiniest bit more. And that's gonna be perfect. This is also a section where you can decide on the length. I want it to fall just about there, so I'm gonna cut from the bottom. But if you want it to be longer, or if you want it to be more flush with the pendant, you can adjust the size. So we're just gonna take our wire nippers, and I'm gonna just cut off this bottom section. You want them to be even on both sides. And that is just about perfect. Now, in order to get the pendant to stay attached to that once we use our wire, I just need to squash down the ends of this piece. You can use a bench block and a hammer if you want. The tools that I usually just use at home are gonna be my needle nose again. The section where that seam meets is what I'm gonna use to just flatten down. So put the end bit in there, and you're just gonna flatten him. You can see the edge is flattened. And that's gonna be just enough that that wire won't slip off of the edge for us. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other end. Just flatten down the end of that wire. Perfect. And then this is when we're gonna attach our 3 rings. So just put those on the end here. And take our 24 gauge wire. You're not gonna need the whole amount that comes in the kit, but it's just there in case there's a mistake made, which sometimes happens. I'm gonna cut that about in half, and I'm gonna stick my wire through the pendant at the top there. And we're gonna wrap around either end. So I'll start on this side. And I like to give about 4 or 5 good wraps. You wanna make sure that it's gonna stay really tight on there. And then you can just cut off that tail end of wire. Your pendant's gonna slide through for you. And we're gonna do the same thing on the opposite end. Side's a little bit trickier just because the pendant is already on there, so you have to get the wire in between the pendant and your 16 gauge component that we've just made. So you can use a needle nose plier to help you get in there. And again, I like to do about 4 or 5 loops on here just to make sure that it's staying really well. And then we just cut off our tail end. And once the component is all made, you can adjust, pinch it in tighter if you want it to be, or pull it out. And we have a finished pendant. These loops are going to be big enough to just go through your chain, and they'll hang out on that bottom section of plain chain. Thanks for joining us. Happy beading.